This is Natalie.
And I'm Catherine Percival.
And welcome to Art Buds.
Art Buds is a podcast about making art in Ontario.
So, Catherine, before we get to this month's guest, tell me what's been going on in the studio for you.
Oh, Natalie, I said yes to too many things. We've had this conversation before, off record, but I have Art on the Street in June, and I'm preparing for that.
It's coming up fast.
Woof. Being an artist for an art festival is a whole new ball game. I didn't think about all the intricate details and all the things that need to be done for that.
What are some of the little tasks that you hadn't anticipated?
The major challenge is how to display artwork in a tent outdoors,
right,
where you could have wind and rain. Heck, at this point, maybe even snow, considering how cold it's been here.
No kidding.
So it's trying to think of all of those factors. You're thinking of like the safety of your artwork that you've invested a lot of time and, depending on framing, a lot of money, and making sure like you protect that. But then also at the end of the day, like, how does it look nice? And I knew that was going to be a challenge, but I don't think I realized how much of a challenge, because there's lots of systems out there. Like, you can buy tent walls with like mesh that holds up to 50 pounds with hooks and all of these accessories, but you're looking at a very large amount of money to do that.
Yeah, it's a big investment.
Thousands.
You almost need like an artist tool library.
Ooh. Yes.
I wonder if the Guelph Tool Library actually has anything like that.
I know the Guelph Tool Library has 10 by 10 tents. I don't think they have like display walls though. So the last while has been just trying to figure out that. So it sounds like I'm going home to build a display with my dad. Needless to say, I'm scared.
Well, I'm sure it'll work out fine, and we're all looking forward to seeing what that looks like. What else is it? Can't just be Art on the Street that's got you worried.
No, so tomorrow, May 10th, the applications close for Color Is, my very first conceptual show where I'm curating and putting together a theme about color. So that closes, and then I have like the month that I'm working on Art on the Street is also the same month that I have to make a show and then tell all the artists who have been accepted that they are now in the show for the end of August. And then, to make matters worse,
you've got another show coming up.
I have my very first solo show.
Where's that going to be?
That will be at the Homer Watson House and Gallery in Kitchener, Ontario.
Exciting.
Yes.
Got lots going on. What's that show about?
That show is about memory. So it's about my grandma who had dementia and Alzheimer's. They're not the same thing. They're different, but I use them pretty interchangeably. And initially, they're the terms to use that, like, she lost her memory, right? She couldn't identify people and things by the end of her life. But it's also about me regaining memory. I didn't have the most standard childhood. Some sad things. And in a way, the brain likes to survive is to forget those things. And then when you become comfortable later in life, they come back up. They like to present themselves in unpleasant ways. So it's a show about losing and regaining memory.
That's probably a lot of hard emotional work in making those pieces.
Yeah. Last summer when I was working on my grandmother's piece, I spent like 2 months just like crying while I was making this work. But it was very cathartic at the same time. It was a very interesting way to grieve. I also would say this show is about grief.
Right.
Yeah. So those were some pretty major things.
It's a pretty emotional time for you.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Feeling a little overwhelmed. But what about you? How is your studio days going?
I haven't really had a lot of studio days lately. It's my busiest time of year at school. I've been coaching. I coach ultimate frisbee at my school, and this is ultimate frisbee season. So between that and teaching a couple of brand new to me courses, there's a lot. So number one on my priority list today is finishing my application for your show, which I hope I get into, and hoping to have some time to just play around in the studio. Really enjoying the flowers that are coming up in my garden and the bugs that brings. So starting to think a lot more about backyard bugs. And yeah, just thinking about having a play.
Playing is important.
Yeah, have not too many expectations on myself right now to produce finished pieces, but just enjoying color, enjoying form, and seeing what happens.
That's probably a nice place to be. Like, no pressure. Whatever happens, happens. If it flows, it flows. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You're not trying to push through kind of any rut, right? Or resistance.
Yeah, earlier in the year, I intentionally didn't sign up for any shows or put my name out for any group shows or anything. And I sort of was regretting that in February, March, because now I've got nothing lined up. But actually, I think that was probably the best decision I could have made. And this summer, I'll have a lot more time in the studio, and I'll be able to think about where to go next. And I want to get my art out there, but this has not been the season.
I think that is something that I'm learning through my overwhelmed process is these things take time. And to do them well, and to do them thoughtfully, and to do them with a sense of ease, the more time you give yourself, the more resistance you won't have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I think my biggest struggle is that, like, because I have so much to do, I don't want to do any of it. Right? Like that procrastination.
Paralysis.
Yeah. And then I have to fight that resistance of like all of these tasks, which then makes going into the studio more work than play.
Mm-hmm.
And while I've had lots of time for this Homer Watson show, I wish I had more time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think I could do this forever.
I think that's the perpetual artist struggle, is always feeling like there's not enough time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a really good conversation to have another day, is just how do we work with the time that we have, and how do we put constraints on ourselves so that we don't sign up for too many things all at once and feel that pressure? What systems can we put in place to avoid feeling that way too much of the time?
I think this will be an excellent prelude to a later episode where we really dive into this, because I think this is a very valid conversation for all artists, especially working artists who have to balance like a lot more than just, oh, I'm in the studio today. Because at the end of the day, I'm thinking about, okay, I need to make art, but I need to promote art, but also I need to wrap art, but also I need to build a display system. I also need to get things framed. Like, it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that when you have multiple other jobs. Wow. I respect artists. I respect working artists a lot more than I did. And it's not that I didn't, but I didn't realize. And now I'm learning.
Sounds like a really good learning experience for you.
If I survive.
You will. You can survive anything for a couple more weeks.
I'm not giving up yet. I'm not giving up yet. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to give up.
On this month's episode, we've got our very first guest.
Indeed. We spoke with Kayla St-Pierre, an oil painter and graduate of University of Guelph in studio art. And wow, oh wow, was it wonderful to talk to her.
Yeah, I'd never met Kayla before, but you know her through the Guelph Emerging Artist Program from a few years back.
Yes, we both were emerging baby artists together 4 years ago, and don't believe Kayla had graduated from the University of Guelph's studio program just yet, but since she has graduated, she has been on fire.
Yeah, she's shown her work at the Guelph Boarding House Gallery, the Lonnie Jennings Contemporary Art Gallery, U of G's Zavitz Gallery, and she was also at the Toronto Artist Project. And of course, her work is currently showing at the Bancroft Art Gallery following a residency that she had there last year.
Yes, and in our conversation with Kayla, I really personally enjoyed hearing about her previous studies in film and how that affected her art, especially in this residency about community at the Art Gallery of Bancroft.
So here's our conversation with Kayla.
Enjoy!
Welcome to Kayla St-Pierre. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we know Kayla from the Guelph Emerging Artist Mentorship Program. It's been 4 years since the program.
That's crazy.
How are you, and how's it been going since?
I'm doing good. I graduated university 2 years ago, which also feels weird. Every time I think about time in any sense, I'm like, whoa, it needs to stop. But I'm doing good.
Was it a BFA that you were doing?
It was, a Bachelor of Arts honors for studio art.
At U of G.
At U of G.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college for film in Sault Ste. Marie, which was like a total left turn. I worked in the film industry for a bit. That was great. Also not great. Film is just very long days and kind of hard to get jobs in the film industry. And it's also like, I really didn't like the inconsistency of it, where it's like, you have a job for a month, now you're unemployed again. So I didn't like that about the film industry. And then after that, I worked a bit. Then I went back for my bachelor's. But now I'm on the other side of it, and I'm really grateful that I went as a mature student. Like, I was really much more focused. Like, I knew what I wanted. I wasn't there as like a baby. I felt like I knew what I was doing. So very grateful for that experience. And now that I'm 2 years out, I'm basically just finding my place in the world again now that school is again over. Now I've settled. I found a job that's like supporting me financially, mostly, as best it can in the current economy. And now I have a studio downtown.
Unnecessary Arts.
Yes. And it's kind of perfect because it's a 4-minute walk away from my job, and I have an hour-long lunch. So I get to like leave during the day to go paint and then go back to work. It's pretty great. And then if I wanted to go to work, go back to the studio after work, I can do that. So this is all kind of recent, like as of November is when I got this job. So like, I feel like life after university was very chaotic and depressing because like the structure of university where you have like this big community around you just kind of crumbles because it's gone. Everyone's going their own way. It's very exciting. It's also very scary. And it's like, what do I do now? Where do I go? So now I feel like I'm finally starting to settle down and kind of figure out what a life can look like in keeping art in my heart, if that makes sense. So yeah.
So what are you working on currently?
Yesterday, I just finished a series that I've been working on for a year. I started it in Bancroft. I did my first ever artist residency, which was like a 5-week, month-long thing. So I've been just finishing up that series because we're doing a joint exhibition between me and the other artists in residence who did like work on the same topic, which is finding community.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so that's May 1st. So I have to bring all the work. My deadline is the 13th, so I just finished it. Yeah.
Tell us about that residency then. How did you find it? And
so do you guys know the website Akimbo? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that website. I think if you're an artist listening to this, especially in Ontario, look up Akimbo, Akimbo. I don't work for them. I just love them. They post a lot of art opportunities, and I was scrolling on there in the spring of 2024, right after I graduated, and I happened to see a call for exhibitions at the Art Gallery of Bancroft. And the only reason I considered it's like 5 hours away. The only reason I considered it is because my parents live about 45 minutes away from Bancroft. So I was like, that could work. So I applied for an exhibition with them. And then a couple of months later, they reached out and they said, hey, we're actually doing our first ever like artist residency. We've never done it before, but we thought, based on your application, we actually think you'd be really good for a residency. And the only reason I was able to say yes is because my parents lived there. So I had accommodations that I could stay. And I was like, yes, that's perfect. So it really just fell into place very perfectly. Like I didn't apply for a residency. So
and the theme of your, like you had applied with this theme that your exhibition that you're now going to have is?
They actually gave me the theme.
Oh.
Yeah. So when they were like, we want to do a residency with you, it's going to be you and also one other person. And the theme is finding community. They had that theme off the bat. That was Molly Moldovan. She's the curator for the Art Gallery of Bancroft. I think she came up with it, or I don't know if they did meetings or whatever, but she was the one who presented it to me. And she was like, this is what we're doing. And instantly I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool topic.
That's
like, how do you
interesting,
paint that?
Especially interesting for somebody coming from outside the community.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not from Bancroft, so I guess doubly so. How do you find it? Like, how do you find community?
How did you?
I would say that I did and I didn't. I think community is kind of this intangible thing that you can't find. It's not something that you can hold or grasp. It's really just a feeling. And, you know, the best you can do really is like try to immerse yourself, try to meet new people, try to be outgoing. I'm an introvert. But I mean, it did help that I was in the gallery Tuesday to Saturdays every week. So there was people coming through the gallery while I was working. So I was able to talk to them. And then like, I feel like a lot of the people in Bancroft were just naturally extroverted and like a very like, they would offer me like, hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to come? There was someone who offered me that I could go horseback riding on their house. It's hard to like, you know, speed run finding community within 5 weeks. 5 weeks is not a lot of time. But I think what I ended up searching for mostly was the traces of people, like patterns of familiarity, where I could feel like a place was lived in. That was like, I didn't want to just paint people.
So how did that translate into the work then?
I guess maybe it helps if I talk about like my process. I work from photography that I turn into oil paintings. And it's very important to me, especially in a world of like AI and just everything going on the internet, to like source my own imagery. So I take a bunch of photos either with my phone or with a DSLR. So like when I first got there, I just went and took a bunch of photos. And I was trying to like experience as much as I could, but I ended up most of the paintings that I ended up making, I kind of just chose from photos I took on the first day there. And it was just going around Bancroft looking for, I don't know, like it's very hard to describe what I was looking for. I just took a bunch of photos basically. But things that ended up showing up in the painting, one of them is a flock of birds, kind of blurry. One of them is these two little moose. They're like little wooden structures it's in a windowsill in a shop, and it's just like very cutesy, and then you can kind of see the town through the window. What else is there? Power lines. I took a photo of the town. I tried to go from like a bird's eye view. It's not really, but as much as I could get like a lot of the town. And something that was really interesting to me was the power lines, because that's something that connects everyone like unknowingly. Like that's something that I was thinking about the fact that you're so trained not to look at power lines. When they're in the environment around you, that's not, you almost edit them out with your brain because you're so used to seeing them, and they're kind of ugly. Like, you know, they're kind of unsightly. People usually are like happy when they're underground or, that was something that I was interested in, is looking for things that specifically are like, so you're so used to that you don't see it. Yeah.
You mentioned you went to film first, and I didn't know that about you, but now that I do, and I know your work, I see a lot of parallels. How does that play for you?
That's funny, because when I was in university and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to paint, like I just got into oil painting, but I didn't know what I wanted to paint. I realized that I was much more interested in work that told a story, or at least could, I don't know, be a bounce off point for conversation, which is like very narrative, and that kind of does lead back to film, which at the time translated into me painting a mermaid. I don't know how, but it was a weird painting. But you know, that's film school or not film school, art school. You're experimenting. But yes, that I feel like that does carry through with me, is that I'm really interested in things that like spark, I guess, conversation mostly. Yeah.
What was it like for you painting in the gallery with people walking through, like in front of an audience that was maybe engaged, maybe not, but just sort of always on display?
The majority of people who walked through were just kind of passerby. Like, you know, they were just kind of coming through, like politely looking and not really engaging. But like there was enough people that would come in and like actually just sit and talk to me. Like sometimes there's a bench, and some people would just sit and just like start telling me their life story or ask about my story. It's a small town gallery. Like Bancroft has under 5,000 people who live there. So there's not a lot of people coming in day to day. Like some days we'd only get a couple visitors, like a handful throughout the whole day. There was a lot of really good conversations and a lot of people opening up about, because I would ask them about their experience with how they feel about, at least like if they, some people would tell me that they weren't from Bancroft and they moved here recently. A lot of people were like that. And I asked them, like, how long did it take you to like make roots in the town? Usually it was a while, like usually a couple years before they felt like settled and like they actually knew people. And it was just interesting to get that feedback back from people. And something that I kind of gathered, which wasn't a surprise to me, but everyone is struggling with community, especially lately. Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with Tammy from Wyndham Arts and Ground Floor, and how we are missing those third spaces that are not your work and not your home, but those places that kind of help you create that community, right? Where you're not having to spend money, but you can just be. And it's definitely a greater conversation that we are missing as a society right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, unfortunately, when it comes to the third space, there's been, I think, an institutional push at the third space because it's a place where homeless people can go. And typically that is not received well by institutions where, you know, they're trying to keep people out. So anything that is free is kind of being clamped down on, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Especially in this economy, right?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see once the new public library is finished and opened, and how does that change some of the, you know, the third space options in the downtown area anyway, because there's obviously, we still have the main branch right here, but as far as what's available in the main branch, it's pales in comparison to the kind of spaces that are available when you go to some of the more suburban branches in town.
Yeah, I'm really curious.
As an emerging artist, and as an artist who has to support themselves with other work, how do you make time to create and stick to deadlines?
It's hard. When I first graduated university, there was like a good stretch of time where I didn't make any paintings. And then I finally made a painting and I was so proud of myself. And then I basically went on, like, until the residency, I didn't make anything else, which the residency was in May of 2025. Then after the residency, like obviously during the residency, so exciting, amazing. I had a space, I had time, I could paint. It was best time of my life. And then after the residency, I was still, I hadn't found this better job yet. I was working retail, and retail, the hours are very inconsistent. I was not making enough money. Like I was making less money than my expenses per month. So I was constantly like fried in the brain, like just thinking about money constantly, which is not a good place to be in. It always felt like I can't paint today. Even if I have the day off, I can't paint today because I have to do this, I have to do this. So I didn't make a painting again until like Christmas time, which is when I start doing like commissions or gifts for people. But then like now that I only got my studio back in Necessary Arts in January. So since then, it is because I have that stability of a job that is covering my expenses that I'm able to do that. So now that I do have like that kind of stability, which stability can mean something different for everybody. For some people, stability could be leaning on friends, leaning on family. You know, it's different for everyone. But once you find like, if you feel safe, that's a huge difference. And then once you do feel safe, I think it's just about working it into your schedule however you can, whatever that looks like. It's going to be different for everyone. That could be once a week for everyone. That could be half an hour a day for someone. It's for me, it's mostly been Monday to Friday, going in half an hour, like an hour to the studio during my work day. I'm usually exhausted by the weekend. Sometimes I get to the studio on the weekend. Sometimes I don't. I think when I first was like getting the studio, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go on the weekend all the time. It's gonna be amazing. No, I'm exhausted and I have to do laundry. So, you know, I think it's really nice to have it baked into my schedule the way that I do it right now.
It's super handy having it so close to work.
I'm very lucky. Yeah.
So what's next after this show is hung? Are you moving on from these paintings that are sort of community oriented, and do you have another project in mind, or?
Yeah. What's next is basically I have a nice little archive on my computer, a little folder of all of these painting references that I want to paint. and I'm going to start cracking through it, because previously, I was working on this series. It kind of felt like if I were to start one of those paintings now, it felt like cheating. I was like, no, I have to devote myself to this project. But now that it's done, I'm like, okay, I am free. I can just do whatever, which it's very exciting to have constraints of a series, but it's also exciting to be done with those constraints. So, everything is exciting, I guess, if you want to look at it that way.
And all these reference photos that you took earlier, you're not sort of over them. Like it doesn't, I don't know. Sometimes when I get ideas, but I don't act on them right away because I'm trying to do some other stuff, when I'm finally ready for them, maybe I'm not into it anymore.
That's really funny. So my photos that I'm really interested in, usually the photos that I'm interested in are from a really long time ago. It's actually kind of rare for me to find a photo that I really want to paint that I just took this photo last week, I really want to paint it. Usually it's like the way that I normally discover my references is I'll go through usually it's like on my computer, like on a hard drive, because I take photos constantly. I go through them and I'll just be like, okay, what was I doing like 5 years ago? And I'll just like start looking through old folders and I'll just see something that's like, at the time I was not thinking about this being a painting. I just was taking a snapshot. Usually it's like a quick moment. There's just something interesting about it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, that's a painting. And then I get excited about it. And usually then I will throw it into a photo editor and I play around with the colors just to push it a bit. And that's like a bouncing off point for the painting. And then, I have a bunch of those kind of photos right now in a folder, and I'm just as excited about them now as I was when I first found them.
Your palette, I find, is very dreamy. Like it's soft, but it's bold.
Yeah.
And dreamy. I think that's the best way I can put it.
Super saturated.
Yeah, but not in like a hurt my eyes kind of way, right? Where does that come from? Like, what's your inspiration for your palette? Because you don't go heavy reds and really like saturated cobalt blue. What inspires your palette?
So when I was doing my last year of university, I had to do a self-directed project, which is kind of what's just started off this whole thing for me. Like I really got excited by what I was doing, and now I'm like, I just want to keep doing it, which was going through photos and finding things and, playing with the colors, just because I think previously I might have become a painter that was more photorealistic. And I realized through the process of making photorealistic paintings that they're kind of boring to me. There's nothing wrong with them, and I think they're beautiful. And I think it's not that there's no reason to do it, but for me, there was no reason to do it. And I really wanted to, like, I'm not an abstract brain. It's just not my normal approach. So I had to do something to modify it in order for it to push out of realism. And the colors kind of came about mostly because of my girlfriend. So my girlfriend really likes pink and purple and all these like really pastel, pretty, girly colors, which when I was younger I hated, which is really funny. Now I love it. Now, I think of her when I see it. And I just think that they go so harmoniously together. And it's also just not something you see very often. I think it just kind of brings me joy. And I was like, how can I play with that? So once I started doing that, I was like, I like this. And I might experiment with the palette. I think for the Finding Community series, I wanted to keep with one palette for consistency because I didn't want it to feel like, it could very easily feel like they're all like really random. So I kind of wanted something to tie them together. But then also it does make me think of my girlfriend. And one of the things I was thinking about for Finding Community is my girlfriend lives in New York. We're long distance. So how can I bring her into this community that I'm finding, which was using the color palette.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Aw, that's nice. So what's next for you? So you finished your residency. You're now inspired by some old photographs. Any goals that you have for yourself? Do you make goals for yourself? What's the process that way?
I do make goals. I don't know that I always stick to them, but I think, sometimes what I'll do is I'll write down like apply to a certain amount of things a year, and I don't do them. I do like to keep that stuff in mind, but I think going forward, I've been kind of turned off by art opportunities that are you have to pay for. There's so many things that you could apply for. Like if you go on Akimbo, it's like, ooh, there's an opportunity here, but $40 fee. This one's a $25 fee. This is a residency, but it costs $1,300. You know, there's all these things that are very, it feels like they're marketing to like this like artist that is already secure, and it kind of just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Like I can understand it to a certain degree, because, you know, there's going to be administrative costs when running kind of events. So like I do understand it, but it also just doesn't feel good. So I've been kind of trying to think about how I can make my own opportunities. Like, it doesn't have to be through an institution. Like, you could always put on your own exhibition, you know. So that's something that's been on my mind. Something else that it's been like a project for a while, which is very similar to what you guys are doing, is like I also like art interviewing artists. So I would like to continue that. Although I have to say I filmed an episode in October or September of 2024, and I have not finished editing it. So maybe I'm not the best person for that. I'm working on it.
If you were going to give advice to somebody 5 years earlier in their art career than you are, what would you tell them?
If I were to speak to someone who's 5 years, basically myself from 5 years ago, I would tell them that pursuing art is not only like possible, but also worthwhile. I've been an artist since I was like 2. I want to say, like, it's always been a part of me. Like, I've never not been doing art, but I think I very easily wrote it off as a career path, because you can't just apply to being an artist. Like, it would be great to be an artist who like lives in a rich person's house and just paints every day, but that's not really how it works anymore. Yeah, so I always thought of it that way, of like, well, it's not a job you can apply for, so there's no stability and it's not going to work out. Now that I've gone to university and like really honed what I do and like am excited about what I do, I realize like what a disservice it would have been if I hadn't gone to university, because I think I had the skills the whole time. University didn't give me the painting skill, but what it gave me is like the lens to look at things through, and like this curiosity and more knowledge about the art world that I really didn't know much about the art world before. I just liked drawing, and it's evolved so much more. And I think if I were to talk to someone like of myself from 5 years ago, I would just say like to keep pursuing it. Like, don't give up. Like, don't just think like, oh, it's not for me, or well, I guess it's just a hobby or a side thing. Like, it's whatever you make of it, and you can make it into a really big thing. Like, it can be a big part of your life. Right now, it's so important to me. Like, yeah.
How does Guelph inform your work? Like, how come
Ooh.
you stayed in Guelph, and then how does it inform your work now? Not just via your studio literally being here,
Yeah.
but the community itself.
I feel like the University of Guelph like was just so much more than I could have asked for. Like, in terms of the community, in terms of the professors were so great, the facilities were great. It just really excited me, like far more than I even thought that I would have before I came. And Guelph is just a really nice community. It feels very welcoming. I honestly feel like the arts community in Guelph is very robust, especially when you look at other cities of comparable sizes. Like, there's a lot going on in Guelph. There's a lot of towns that don't have studio space like that. For someone who's an oil painter and also likes to work big, that's kind of a biggie, you know?
I've got to imagine working in a sort of shared studio space like Necessary Arts is also kind of brings back some of the university experience as well. You mentioned earlier, like just how much you liked being in that kind of communal studio space.
Yeah. I feel like often when I go to Necessary Arts, I end up going into the studio when no one else is there. I don't know if it's because it's like other people are working at that time, but yeah, when I do run into people, it's really nice, because something I miss about university that I realized recently is I just miss talking about art. Not my own art, just art in general. Like, I want to talk about your art. I want to talk about art, modern art. I want to talk about contemporary art. I just want to talk about art in any context. And I don't often have people to talk about art with, or the art to talk about. So it's really nice, like, to run into studio members and like, what are you working on? You know, like, that's very nice. It does reminisce on university, but I do still miss it.
Who's your art bud?
Who's my art bud? I feel like I have a lot of art buds from university. One of my art buds is Emily Valentine. She was in the program with me. She dropped out. She's been doing very well. So she's one of my art buds. We catch up every once in a while.
Thanks for joining us today, Kayla. Where can people find your work if they wanted to learn more about you?
I'm on Instagram. I feel like I post there the most. It's Kayla St-Pierre Art. I also have a website, which is kaylasaint-pierre.com.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, thank you. I always, because I have two different URLs and then I forget. One of them is kaylasaint-pierre.square.site. That's where you can find like my gallery, and if you wanted to commission, I have a form on there. And I'm also on YouTube and TikTok. I make videos occasionally.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for coming. We are very happy that you got to be our very first guest.
Thank you. I feel very honored.
So that was most of our conversation with Kayla. There were a few other topics that we touched on, including a special connection she has with Robert Bateman. She actually met him when she was younger.
But we're saving that for a very special episode later in the season, so no spoilers. You'll have to just stay tuned.
And thanks for listening, folks. Have a great afternoon.
Bye! Bow, 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 bow.